So some of the complications that I had from COVID, other than the obvious, the fibrosis from COVID attacking my lungs, um, my entire body peeled from head to toe. I told my wife it was like I molted like a crab. I mean, it was disgusting. I had just flesh hanging off of me everywhere, and I just get in the shower and just scrub it and scrub it and scrub it, trying to get it off. And then my hearing got real bad, and they said it was because your jaw muscle, when you chew and things like that, your jaw muscle works your eardrum and it works that earwax out, and that I hadn't been moving my jaw for months, and so my ears was full of wax and I could barely hear. So they had to do ear drops and things like that so I could get my hearing back. And then I was seeing spots, these little gold dots. I called them fireflies, and I would see them like out of the corner of my eye. And at first, I asked my wife. I said, "Is there a fly in here?" She said, "No." I said, "I could have swore a fly just flew past my head," and it was just so random. I'd barely have them, and it's just like, like, did I see that? Well, then they started getting a little more. They started coming on a little more often. And so that was, bothering me, because I thought, well, now I've got neurological damage. And so the doctor said, well, we don't see anything wrong with you. You just need to check with your optometrist when you get discharged. Okay. So then, so I had the peeling, and I had a bald spot on my head, and it was about the size of I'd say an egg, like a chicken egg, on the back corner of my head. And I mean, it was slick as a whistle down to the scalp. And they said, well, some people said, well, that's probably they just didn't move you that much. And I said, no, this was on the corner of my head, so I would have had to been, kind of tilted. And then my hair just started falling out like crazy. It was just everywhere I go, there was just hair everywhere, hair and dead skin. It was disgusting. I had to deal with that. And so then, let me see some other side effects that I had. Obviously the breathing, that's a huge side effect. My blood oxygen drops very quickly, even still. That was September the 4th when I came off the ventilator, and now it's January the 6th, and still, if I do any type of physical activity, like I can get on a treadmill and set it for 1.5 miles per hour, and within 30 seconds, if I'm not doing supplemental oxygen, my blood oxygen will drop into the mid 80s. And so I got to put on my cannula and do like 1 liter of oxygen. And that it only takes like 1 liter of oxygen and it comes right back up. I mean, I'll be in the 90s, mid 90s, upper 90s. So, that's a big deal for me. My strength is still, my strength came back. My appetite came back. And when my appetite came back, my strength came back. So that's one thing, anybody that's watching this that's going through it, I want you to know that whenever your appetite comes back, like, this is honest truth. Monday morning, I weighed 202 pounds. And that day is like I was just ravenous. I mean, just like a teenage kid, like eating everything in sight. And by Saturday night, I weighed 217 pounds. And I was able to pick things up and, walk, carry myself better. So it doesn't, everybody was like, oh, your strength will come back quick. And it does to a degree. But I'm still probably only like 60% of my strength. Probably not even that. Probably closer to 40%, honestly. Because used to, I would work out with 250 pounds on bench press without a spot. That was a weight that it was safe enough that I could do without a spot. And yesterday was my first time back at the gym. And I did Um, I think it was 80 pounds on bench press. And so, and I mean, it wasn't a huge struggle for me, but it was a big disappointment for me because I would have been able to do 80 pounds with one hand 20 times, no problem prior. So that was a big, big struggle for me was getting my strength back. And anxiety was another side effect that I had. I was never anxious before, and man, when I got home, I was climbing the walls. I thought, that my lung had perforated, and that I was going to have another pneumothorax, and I was going to have to go back to the hospital. And I mean, my mind was just racing. It's like, okay, one thing leading to another. Like, I'm going to have to go back to the hospital. They're going to have to do that chest tube on me again, and then the doctor's going to tell me that if this keeps happening, I'm just going to have a lung transplant. And, it just, one thing led to another. My mind was just racing and racing. And my wife's like, listen, God got us this far. He's got us over all the hurdles and obstacles. And, you're going to be fine. And her telling me that was very reassuring. And, my wife being there for me the whole time, it was just, like I said, she's the only person that can calm me down. And so that was another side effect. Turns out the infectious disease doctor did a sample of the liquid that they extracted from my lung. And turns out I had a fungus in my lung. So she's got me on antifungal medicine. And that really zaps my strength. It's like when you take a really strong antibiotic, and it really kicks you down. Well, that's how this is, and I got to take it twice a day for 3 months. And so I'm really just hoping and praying that after that 3-month period, when I finally get off of these things, that my strength will come back, my energy level will come back, because I call it getting gassed out. I'll gas out so fast if I climb a ladder and like say we put up Christmas lights at our house. Well, I just watched them do it, but my nephew was helping and he was having an issue, and so I climbed. I got my oxygen bottle and I climbed up that ladder and gave him a hand. And I mean, it's just like just that minimal amount of effort. I could barely keep my eyes open after that. I was sleepy. It's like it wore me out to the point where my body was telling me it needed a recharge. And so when I go to physical therapy, I was going twice a week, and I would go on Mondays and Wednesdays, and it took Tuesday and Thursday to recover. Like I was almost not sleeping all day long, but I'd sleep till like 10 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd get up, and me and my wife would go run some errands and stuff. But I just was physically exhausted. It's like yesterday was the first day of 2-a-days again, back football days. And so that's been a big struggle for me as well. I got off of my oxygen. They gave me a concentrator. I got off of it at nighttime, but my wife got me a Galaxy watch to monitor my blood oxygen, because the pulse oximeter that I had for my finger, when it would get cold or hot outside, the thing wouldn't work. If I was outside and it was cold or hot, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't give me a reading. And so this, no matter whether it's cold or hot, it's been it's worked, and it's been within like 1% accurate of the pulse ox whenever I measure them inside together. And so, but one cool thing about it is it monitors my blood oxygen while I sleep, and it'll record snoring, which blew my mind. And I asked my wife, I said, do I snore anymore? And she said, no, since you've gotten home from rehab, you don't snore anymore. And my daughter, she came and slept in our room one night, and she said, Daddy, you scared me last night. You was snoring so fast. And I said, I wasn't snoring. She said, yes, you was. And I looked on my watch, and it said sleep data, and it said snoring. And I click on it, and I hear the recording, and I was going, I wasn't really snoring, but I was like panting like a dog. I was going, and It was very weird. Well, so then I noticed my blood oxygen during the night was averaging high 80s, but would drop into the 70s sometimes. And that's bad because, like I said, 88% is the point where your body starts to rob your other organs of oxygen, so your brain and your heart has sufficient oxygen. And so then I had to start sleeping with my concentrator again, and I just put it on 1 liter, and it'd be fine. I didn't snore or anything like that anymore, and but you could see during the night on my watch, you could see where my cannula, if I rolled over and my cannula came off, you would see it would be like 95, just straight as an arrow, and all of a sudden, boom, it would just drop down to mid or low 80s. And sometimes once it even got down to 74. And then, you could see I put my cannula back on, and it'd shoot right back up to 95 and just stay there. And so I had a sleep study done, and I'm waiting to hear the results on that. But the, the lady put the cannula on me, and she said, well, in very rare cases, we'll have to put you on a CPAP, but we really don't have to do that very often. And I said, okay. So she puts all them electrodes on me. I get in bed. I fall straight asleep. Boom, I'm out. And it felt like I was asleep for 20 minutes. She walks in there. She says, sir, I'm going to have to ask you to wake up for a second. We're going to have to put this CPAP on you. And I was like, oh, I'm one of those rare cases, huh? And she said, yeah, you are. I said, well, that's my luck. Because when the disease specialist finally got the specimen name of the fungus from the lab that I had, she told me, she said that she'd been doing this for 20 some odd years, and that she had never seen anybody with this particular kind of fungus. She said it was like winning the fungus lottery. And so I said, well, that's my luck. But so the other side effects, like I said, my hair just continued to fall out. And I've always had real thick hair. And it got to the point where when I'd fix my hair, you could just see my scalp everywhere. No matter which way I turned, is just all you could just see my scalp. And so that was kind of a blow to my pride. And then I got these lines on my fingernails, and they was like 3-dimensional lines. You could feel them. It was like a dip in my fingernail all the way across all 10 fingers. And so I was getting online and looking it up, and they're called Bose lines. And it was basically from like the virus. So I don't know if it's from a vitamin deficiency or what, but you could see in the lines on my hands where I had the virus, and since then it's grown out to the point where I was able to trim it off. But from what I was told, whenever my body was shedding the skin and then seeing these Bose lines, that was my body trying to get rid of the virus, the COVID virus. So just a lot of different things that I've experienced. My biggest, like I said, is my blood oxygen. And another big struggle for me was my brain says I can do something. And I go to get out of bed and, go to the restroom, and it's like I just about collapse. And, I'm used to just being able to go and do things. And so that was a big struggle. The doctors and nurses all in the hospital and physical therapy, they all told me, they said, no, sir, listen, you're going to have to go slow. You're going to have to take things slow. And I said, that word is not in my vocabulary. Since the day that I was born, I've been running wide open. And they said, well, you're going to have to learn. You can't run wide open anymore. And at every point in my progress, I would ask them, is this as good as I'm going to get? And they would say, well, you're a COVID long hauler, so we don't know. And, it's like I'd be able to move my arms and put a little bit of weight on my legs. And I'm like, is this as good as it's going to get, or am I going to get better? And they just tell me, they wouldn't give me a definite answer. They just said, well, you're a COVID long hauler, so we don't really know. Some people, do great, and some people don't. And then I get a little bit stronger. I got my voice back, because at first it was real weak and it was real scratchy. I'd talk like this. and my wife couldn't understand what I was asking, and I'd have to take big breaths and talk slow, and it would just frustrate me. I was begging her for crushed ice, and she could not figure out what I was wanting, and my mouth was like dry as a Sahara Desert, and I'm like, just crushed ice, ice chips, and she's like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, baby. I know you're trying to tell me something, but I don't know what it is. It reminded me of that part on Finding Nemo when the turtle was talking to Marlin, and he said, "You're so adorable. I know you're trying to tell me something, but I don't know what you're trying to say." And that's what it was like trying to communicate for a few days, but it was incredible. I mean, God's healing was just amazing because it was like that for a few days, and then I woke up, and then I was talking just like this. And all the nurses that came in that day, they'd say, "Hey, how are you?" And I'd say, "I'm doing good. How are you?" And they'd say, "Wow, you're talking great." And I'd say, "Yeah, I'm doing better." And then, when I started feeling better and rehab, good enough to start calling some of my family members, because I had all of my family members, family and friends, everybody wanted to Zoom with me or wanted me to call them. And, it was kind of a depression thing. Even whenever I got my voice back, I just didn't want to talk to anybody yet. I wasn't ready. I just wanted my wife, just wanted her there. And I just wanted to talk to her. And man, I talked to her for hours, just nonstop, telling her about my dreams and stuff, just hours on end, from the time she would get there during visiting hours to the time she left. I mean, I barely stopped talking. And so, it was kind of, I feel guilty for not wanting to talk to some of my other family and some of my friends, because, they were so genuinely concerned about me. But it was just, I don't know, it was just one of those things mentally. I wasn't ready yet. And so, that was one of my struggles.